So, hello and welcome along to isolation interviews for Hospital Radio Reading and for my YouTube channel. And I'm super excited to be welcoming back an amazing guest in the form of Gillian Wright. Gillian, welcome back. How are you?
I'm very well, and thank you for inviting me back. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, it's an absolute honor to have you on. And one of the reasons I wanted to get you back on is actually I did a bit of research and was looking into it. And actually, our interview that we did 4 years ago, I can't believe how time has flown. But it's actually my most viewed interview with over 11,000 views and probably more since then. So obviously, people love to hear from you. So yeah, I just had to get you back on.
Oh,
Now, obviously, there's so much to talk about. We will, of course, talk about EastEnders, but I thought we'd talk a bit about some other little projects you've been working on. Now, the first one I thought we'd talk about is your handmade in between scenes, which is a lovely little page on Instagram you've set up. So tell us a bit about that and how did that come about?
well, you see, first off, I have my dear sister and best friend has MS, and she's in an electric wheelchair. And so, over the last 30 odd years, her body has gradually declined in use, and she's very limited mobility now. Um, and I actually used to be an actress, a very, very good one, and able-bodied and all singing, all dancing. And then my work progressed and her body got iller and iller. And especially with television, but also in theatre, there's a lot of hanging around and hanging around backstage, hanging around waiting to go on. And it started off when I was in the West End, and I was in an Alan Ayckbourn, and I wasn't on for the first half hour of the show, along with the guy who played my husband. He sat and read the newspaper. Now I can't do that because I know that I would get so engrossed, I would completely miss my call over the tannoy, and I would be late on stage. So I felt, but it's a waste of time. I need something to keep me occupied where I can listen to the tannoy, listen to the show, listen to the audience's reactions, but still be doing something. And so I found knitting quite a thing that keeps you calm, so that you're in this neutral state. You're not giddy with excitement telling stories backstage, or, I'm just in a neutral place, and then I can hear the tannoy, hear the show. And so I went up to Scotland once to see my mum and dad, and mum took me to her creative arts class. And there was a lady with a felted bag hanging off the back of her chair, and she told me how she made it. It was beautiful, and it was knitted. And when it's knitted, it's 3 times bigger than it turns out. And then you just, like you do when you shrink a jumper in the washing machine, but this time you do it on purpose. So you knit something very, very large and then put it on a boil wash in the washing machine, and it comes out shrunk and taut and tight, and that was just the perfect thing, really. So I started making evening bags, and I just started experimenting, and I'm quite chuffed with some of the things that I've made, really. And then I was starting an art class in my spare time, and the art teacher overheard me say, "I've got a heap load of felted bags in the bottom of my wardrobe, and I don't know what to do with them." And she asked to see them, so I showed them to her, and she said, "These have to be seen by the general public." And she gave me my first stall on an arts and crafts fair. And I sold quite a lot of stuff, and I decided all that money would go to the MS Trust. So in that way, I'm not wasting the amount of time I am hanging around at work. And I'm doing something constructive that helps me remain in a neutral place, and actually is doing some good to for the MS Society and the MS Trust. So
I mean, it's amazing because you're not just bringing joy to the people that buy, the products because they're fantastic, but also being able to give back to charity, such an amazing thing.
yeah,
Now, if anyone wants to kind of check it out, literally on Instagram, handmade between scenes, thoroughly recommend check out the page. Beautiful stuff on there. So well done to yourself.
thank you.
Also, you've been doing a bit of solo traveling, which I've done in the past as well. Not with any sort of groups or anything. I've purely just hopped on a
Yes,
plane and gone abroad myself.
yes.
How have you found that? You must. It's amazing how exciting it can be to do something by yourself.
It is, but it is also daunting. I have to say, I am every time I book well in advance, but when it gets nearer to the date, I find myself getting quite anxious and wondering why on earth I thought I could do this. I find the airport side of things daunting, and I'm very anxious there because being a solo traveller when you put your iPad on that tray that goes through the X-ray machine, there isn't anybody at the other end to pick it up, and you're stuck in a queue waiting to go through the X-ray machine yourself. And I will invariably get stopped because I've got a metal in my wrist. So, and all the time I can see my iPad is over there, you know. I'm so worried and anxious that things are going to get nicked, or, you know. And there have been some instances in the past, but, you know, you ride through them really. But those are the most anxious times, really. But I started off because me and my sister used to travel a lot and go on holidays a lot together. And then gradually she couldn't. So I couldn't or didn't. And then I thought, this can't go on. I have to reclaim a bit of my life. So I started booking holidays that if she was able-bodied, she wouldn't want to do it in a month of Sundays. So I didn't feel so guilty. So I did a safari in Zambia, and that was with a group of people, but I did it on my own, and we weren't all traveling together. It was just different camp. I did 4 different camps, so with 4 different groups of people, and loved it. And then I did little holidays on my own, and then just gradually I've got braver and braver. And so this recent one in Vietnam, none of them are organized trips. I just do a lot of homework, and you can do Vietnam in 2 weeks, but I was quite knackered before I left, and I didn't want to be knackered when I came back. So I just chose 3 different places to go to and spent quality time in each place, you know. But I found it very liberating, actually, to just do what takes your fancy that day, you know, and to be able to do things that if you're with somebody who didn't want to do them, you wouldn't then do them, you know. So, and also as a single traveller, you get to speak to loads more people, I think, than you would do if you're in a group or with a partner, because you are in a way forced to turn out and ask questions of other people outside. And in that way, you get embroiled in conversations that then lead you on to adventures that you wouldn't have done if you hadn't spoken to that person, you know. So yeah.
I mean, I must admit, when I did a bit of solo traveling in the past, I say love the fact that you have that freedom and you can kind of do what you want. There's no one else you've got to please. The one thing I will admit I always found a bit strange and a bit tough was the going for restaurants and
I
eating
knew you were going to say
on
that.
your
Yeah.
own, because you're sat there with not really anyone to talk to, unless you know, confident enough to, you know, talk to other people on other tables. But that's the one bit I always struggled a little bit with, was
Right.
because you think people are going to judge you. That's a silly attitude to have.
Yes.
But I mean, how did you find that side of things?
I agree with you. To begin with, I found it quite hard to go downstairs to the restaurant or wander through the streets to try and find somewhere. And I would always have a book with me so that I was totally occupied and I didn't notice anybody looking at me, you know, going, oh, poor woman, she's on her own. But I actually don't care now, because I've realised nobody's remotely interested in who that woman is in the corner. I never read my book because I wasn't really concentrating anyway, and I would only have to read those pages again when I got back. And I felt like in Vietnam, I found looking at the photographs I'd taken that day was enough to occupy me. Looking at the menu and asking about it. I did a food tour in Vietnam with just me and this lady who's a professional chef, and it was 4 hours, and I had such a wonderful time and learned so many. It was street food tour, and then I tasted so many different dishes, but I learned the stories of the women that had inherited those recipes and the rules and regulations of what they were, you know. It was just jam-packed. So when I did go out for a meal, I was a little bit more informed about what I was choosing to eat and what was in it, and, you know. So I found all that fascinating. The more you do, the more you become interested. It's the more it spurs you on, really, I suppose.
I mean, thoroughly recommend anyone when they're out of hospital, go and do something, you know, be brave. I mean, what's the worst that's going to, well, I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're just going to have a great time. Just be careful while you're out there is all I'd say,
Well,
wherever you
yes,
go.
I agree. Being a woman on your own, I'm exceptionally cautious, but I felt very safe in Vietnam. So I did, and there were a couple of times when I questioned myself as to whether I was being a bit gung-ho or not, but no, it was all very good. I mean, I've had quite a lot of messages since that post went out, from people saying they wish they could be brave or they wish they could do what I'm doing. And I'm doing it because if I wait to go with somebody, I'll never get there. there isn't enough time left in my life for me to go to all the places I want to go to if I'm waiting to go with somebody who wants to do the same thing as me. So it was a bit like when I got divorced many years ago. I didn't have a roast dinner for ages. And then I realized, am I never going to have a roast dinner again? And that's why I cooked myself a roast dinner. And that was like, and it was delicious. And so it's a bit like that, really. But I would say to those that have never done it before, and especially if you're just coming out of hospital, just go small to begin with. Go away for the weekend, not very far away, so that if you don't like it, you can turn around and come back again, or just go somewhere to the coast, or if you don't live by the coast, and just spend one night in a hotel and have the day, and then come back and see how you go, and just build up to maybe 2 nights or a week, or
I was going to say that's perfect advice, really. Now we obviously have to talk about EastEnders, and you're there at the moment. So I believe you're in your dressing room. I mean,
yes.
Jean has been through so much recently, and I do feel for her. And I mean, I know how popular the character is and how popular you are on the show. When you were paired up with Harvey, let's talk a bit about that sort of
Yes.
pairing. What was your thoughts? What was going through your head when I mean, obviously Ross seems like an amazing bloke. I've never sort of met
Yes.
him, but he seems
Yes.
fantastic. But what was
Yes.
that thought process of them pairing
Um,
Jean up?
I asked for them to not pair Jean up too soon after the Daniel storyline, because I didn't want that to be undermined. And in a way, there was a nice enough gap, but still, I was able to not play Jean not interested to begin with, which I think is more interesting than having two people falling in love with each other right from the word go. So it was quite a long sort of friendship, I suppose, to begin with Ross. And I was delighted to meet Ross when he first started here for that role, because I'd seen him in Mum, on that television series Mum, and I thought that was such a brilliant television series. So it was exciting to work with him. Yeah. And then when I heard that we were splitting up, I was quite sad, but I thought something had to happen, because ever since he'd moved in at the Slaters, we hadn't really had that much of a on-screen relationship. So I sort of understood why they were splitting us up. But the scripts for that week of episodes that went out recently were just so good. We were just so chuffed with the writing for us that it was a joy to do, really.
And I mean, it was. I was going to say it was heartbreaking, because obviously at one point Jean was so, I don't want to use the word desperate, but was so like, let's just forget it happened, let's just move
Yeah.
on, and kind of was prepared to just gloss over it, which for the audience we want better for her. So what are those, when you're doing those really emotional scenes, where do you go to sort of get that emotion?
Well, I don't know really. I don't know. You just that's what I do love about playing Jean, is that is looking for the turn of emotion that's not anticipated. So, for instance, if you spend time on the script and you just go, okay, what's the situation here? Stacey's been in the bedroom, she's been in there for some time, and now she's emerging out. She's not going to pour her heart out to Stacey. She's going to make out to Stacey that everything's fine, and the most important person in the world is Stacey, But in the action of doing that, she realizes whether she loves Harvey or not, whether he loves her or not, she needs Harvey in this household to make everything work. So yeah, you sort of have to just plot your reason whys through, really. But like I said to Ross at the beginning of that shoot for that, I said the writing is so good. We don't have to do that much acting here. If we just know our lines and listen to each other, then hopefully the audience will be drawn in and will just listen. So yeah.
And I mean, are you pleased maybe that Jean's gonna be on her own for a bit now? Do you prefer Jean single, or do you like her to have, someone to bounce off of?
I think it'd be interesting to see her single for a bit. I'm not that keen on all the characters sort of jumping into loads of different relationships straight after somebody else, because it just sort of undermines the relationship that you've just had, really. So, well, I think it does. So, it's nice to see her a bit well, basically, she's angry at the moment. So, and I'm really enjoying being angry with Harvey. And I actually said to the exec, this is really good fun, actually, because there's some stuff going to come up soon, I think, in the next couple of weeks where she exacts a little bit of revenge, I think. But and it's fun to play. It's fun. So
I mean, the
we're
other,
enjoying being horrible to each other.
I mean, the other thing we have to talk about was recently we got to see Jean slap Cat, which that
Yes.
was quite interesting. What I mean, when you do a scene like that, I imagine it is so well choreographed to so you don't actually hit each other. But
Yes.
I mean, what was that like doing that with Jessie?
It was great, because when Jean first came into the square, I remember she slapped quite a lot of people. I mean, I remember Mo and I had a scene where I slapped her, and it wasn't scripted. She slapped me back, and I said, "What did you do that for?" But we slapped each other in those days. You know, there was no stunt. You just slapped each other, and Lacey was saying, I said, "Do you remember those days?" And she said, "Yes, I remember you saying to me, right, when we go for this tech, I'm just going to slap you. Okay, is that okay?" And I just went, "Yeah, yeah," you know. And it hurts, it stings, and you do the rest of the scene with a sting on your face, you know. But of course, we're not allowed to do that now, so it is highly choreographed, and yeah, it's highly choreographed. So you just rely on the timing of my hand in front of her face, her turning her head at the right time, you know. Yeah.
And I mean, someone else we have to talk about who is super talented and has a bright future ahead of her. And I've forgotten her name, but the actress who plays Lily,
Oh,
she,
Lilia. Yes, Lilia.
yes,
Yeah.
she is fantastic. You must be so proud watching her.
She's just
Just,
delightful. Yeah.
yeah.
She really is. And she loves her job, and she's always anxious about whether she's done the best that she can. And she really considers what she's doing. She's just a joy to work with. She really, really is.
I mean,
Yeah.
the whole sort of Slater family seems like you guys get on well on and off screen. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the Slaters, you know, are probably the best family on the street.
Yeah,
Would you? I
I
mean,
think so.
so I mean, to be a Slater, that must feel like an honor because they are such a legendary family on the show. So
Yeah.
you must love it.
Yes, and I think that's why Jean's line to Kat at the end of that episode, "You're no longer a Slater anymore," was stings. Kat really reels from that sentence because it is a big thing to say, really, a big thing. Yeah.
Now, now
Yeah.
we also know that I mean the sort of the sad news that Lacey is going to be departing the show. I mean, there's hope. I think the way that it was kind of announced, we're hoping that she might come back in the future. But you're gonna clearly going to miss working with her.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
but I imagine are you quite excited to see what will happen with Jean without Stacey about?
Yes, I mean, uh, I will miss her enormously, but we have had time apart before. So she left for 4 years, and I left for 4 years. So there was and when I left, she came back. When she came back, I left. Oh, I can't remember which way around, but it was 8 years back to back when we weren't in the show together. I think something along those lines. Not quite sure, but something like that. So of course, I had my adventures with Ada Edmondson when Stacey wasn't in the show, or she was just leaving the show. So, and she had her adventures when I wasn't in the show. But I think that I hope one day if I'm still in the show, that we do get to work with each other again, because I don't. It feels a very long time since we've had a really good meaty story together, just her and me, like we used to in the olden days. Yeah, yeah, I would love that, to have that chance again. Yeah.
I mean, as I say, you've had so many amazing storylines. I mean, the one that still sticks in my head as kind of, I would say, a favorite of yours that you did was the episode down in Southend. I think it was
Oh,
Southend,
yeah.
where
Yes.
Jean was literally having a breakdown, and that was
Yeah.
just so. I mean, I'm pretty sure you got some awards for that episode because that was fantastic, and you must have loved doing those scenes.
Oh, I did. I really, really did. I mean, the scenes in the sea were tricky because there was a moment when Jean actually stumbles, and goes under the water. But you're supposed to think that maybe she's gone under on purpose and maybe she's trying to end her life. Who knows? But it's supposed to be ambiguous. But so I did the stumble and I'm supposed to go under, but my dress kept bringing me floating back up to the water. So I was forever trying to get myself back down again. And it was a pressurized shoot because there were two camera guys holding the camera on the waves on a platform with waterproofing over it. And it was really, really hard. And what was exceptionally hard was turning around and talking to Lacey on the shore, where right behind her were hundreds of people watching who were right in my eye line, shouting and waving. So it's like, oh God, this is really hard. But it was great, great fun.
I mean,
I'm very privileged to have been given that to do. So
that must be quite tricky whenever you're filming on, out and about, because people are going to stop, they're going to want to watch.
Yeah,
I imagine that must be quite tricky to kind of make sure that that isn't then captured on in the episode, because
yes,
I mean that wouldn't really happen otherwise.
no, and it's public ground that you're on, so you can't ask them to go away. It's not fair. So it just tough to that was difficult. I have to admit that bit. Yeah.
Now we have to talk about the 40th, because the 40th was fantastic, and you should all be so proud of what you did this last couple of weeks and months, because it is just amazing. The live episode obviously was so hard because we lost an EastEnders icon in Martin Fowler, and for you that must be hard when he's been a big part of the Slater family, and for him to obviously he's going off to do new projects, but when you lose a cast member like that must be tricky.
Oh, it was awful. To be brutally frank, it was awful. And what happens is we shot all the stuff prior to the live app a couple of months before. Then we've got a couple of months before we've got the live app. So he'd gone for those 2 months, and then he came back to do the live, but he was really quite isolated with Lacey in that episode. So not really many of us saw him. But in a way, he had already gone. Then he had his leaving party after the live. But a lot of people are. Well, we're all very, very upset because he's a great actor, an absolutely wonderful person to work with, very generous, and had a lot more to give, I think. So we wish that it hadn't happened. Yeah.
I mean, also talking about, amazing performances. Obviously, we saw at the British Soap Awards recently that Lacey and Steve McFadden won some big awards, thoroughly deserved. I mean,
Absolutely.
how has Lacey, been since winning? I mean, she's such a popular character, but I mean, how has she been since she won that?
She's extremely humble. She really is. She's very humble. Nothing goes to her head. Nothing. She has her work-life balance very well sorted, and she has her kids, and she has a lovely home life. So that's her main priority. So she'll go off and get the award, or she'll pick up the award and say what she means and what she feels. But that's it. It doesn't translate into any other any part of her rest of her life in any way.
It must be though a nice feeling, because you guys put so much work into making the show, and EastEnders did really well at the British Soap Awards. So there must be a nice sort of feeling amongst the cast that the show, also that the fans are still loving what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And it's you can get so caught up in the work, and at the end of the day, you get out of your costume, you get in your car, and you drive home. It's not like doing theatre where it's not about not being thanked, but when you do a piece of theatre, you hear the audience every minute of the show, every second of the show. You can hear whether they're with you or not. And you have a finish point, a full stop, where you take the curtain call and they clap, and you know whether it went down well or whether it was, but with this, you do the scenes and you move on. We work really, really fast. There's no rehearsal. We just get on with it. There might be a few hiccups where we don't quite understand what's happened in order for us to say that, but that's cleared up. And at the end of the day, you get back in the car and you go home, and then you do the same thing 5 or 6 days a week. And there is no sort of acknowledgement of what you've done, because then when you watch it, the first time you watch it is when it's transmitted on television along with the rest of the general public watching it, and you watch that alone. So you have really no feedback at all about whether what you're doing is working or not working. And I'm not that great on social media. I have got my Instagram account, but that's about it. So I don't go searching for responses, but I do. I was very pleased about these soap awards because I understood there was a big cheer and people were very pleased to go, okay, so we're on the right track. We're doing okay.
Now, I mean, obviously you get to work with, some amazing, cast members on the show. Is there anyone that you don't really get to do much with that you would love to do more with going forward if the opportunity arose?
Uh, uh, I would like to do something a little. I would like to work with people that you wouldn't expect Jean to be associated with. So I have actually mentioned that upstairs, and they were interested in that. So we'll see. But yeah, yes, we have our own little people that we're with, and it would just be nice to actually have a scene with somebody you least expect her to be having a scene with, or a storyline with, or.
I mean, I know someone who I think, I'd love to see more of yourself working with is Angela Winter, who obviously is
Oh
fantastic as
yes,
Yolandi. I mean, you must when you do get
that's a
those
good
sorts
idea, actually.
when
Yeah.
you do get those sorts of scenes with people like that, or Rudolph Walker, who obviously plays Patrick, you kind of do you find that that's quite nice because not only are you kind of interacting with someone who might have a different style to you and that, but also someone people of their position who have a wealth of knowledge is also nice because you're all, I mean, as an actor, I imagine you're always still learning.
Yes, yes, yes. And it is very refreshing to work with somebody who has different rhythms, maybe speaks a lot more slowly or a lot more chilled out, or and then you realize, oh, am I being too hyper here? It's lovely. It's lovely and very, very refreshing.
And I
Yeah,
imagine as well that someone who you would love to see come back again, of course, Rob Kaczynski, who
yeah.
we did see him a little while back during the COVID period. He popped back for a little bit. Would you? I mean, I know he's super busy, but would you love him to come back
Oh,
again?
I'd love him to come back again. Yes. Whenever they say, who would you like? I say, you know who I want back.
Because I know he did actually say that he would, because obviously in real life families, they keep in touch, they keep coming back. So I think he did actually say in an interview once that where he can, he will try and come back a bit more,
Yes, yes,
which I think the fans are going to love that if we do see
yes.
him come back.
I think that Comic Con, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Those, I think he's very much in demand on those. I think so. But yeah, it would be great if he came back.
Now, obviously, Jean has done so much. Is there something you still would love to see her do going forward? A storyline or even just a type of sort of scene you would love to do going forward.
Um, it's hard. I'm not a great initiator. I'm a responder, which I always sussed when I was at university. I'd be given if somebody gives you a blank page and says, okay, you can do whatever you want, the budget's whatever you want, you can have as many people as you want, I go, oh God, right. And I'm there for ages, continuously changing my mind. If somebody says you can have 4 actors, this is the budget, it's got to be a rural tour, it's an hour and a half long, blah blah blah, I go, okay, I can respond to that. So I don't know is the answer to that. I would like to see her do something unexpected, or be responsible, be the unexpected source of some storyline. Yeah.
I mean, people are loving Jean. I mean, all I can say is just keep doing what you're doing because you're doing a
Oh,
fantastic job.
thank you.
Now, I know one of the other things I was going to mention is I did get to speak to Lacey last year, and obviously she's a big one for upholstery and doing, making things with her hands, similar to yourself. Do you think one day you'd ever collaborate on a project together?
Wow, that would be great. That would be great. I'd love to do that.
Because I know that she's big into like furniture, like chairs and stuff, and I could imagine you knitting like a little seat for the chair or something would be
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That would be
So
a great idea.
now,
Yeah.
obviously, for anyone who's in hospital, we just want to sort of send their best wishes. But what would you like to say, first of all, to anyone who's currently stuck in hospital at the moment, but also to the amazing NHS staff who do such a fantastic job? What would you like to say to them?
Huge thank you. Firstly, to the staff who work tirelessly and sometimes may seem wearied, but really are doing their best. And I've been in hospital a few times myself, and I have been eternally grateful. Even to, I think the last time I was in hospital, I was by a broken window and I was freezing cold, and the cleaner came in the following morning with knitted blankets from some knitting volunteer group, and she lay one on my bed and said, "You can keep it." And even now, that brings me to tears because I felt it was just such a lovely, lovely gesture. Um, my mum has just come out of hospital and she's got one of these special cushions that she needs to use now under her arm, and again made by a volunteer group. There is a lot of thought and a lot of love winging their way invisibly to people in hospital. So those that are in and have been in and feel that they're still going to be in for some time, just remember that there's a lot of love winging its way around all those wards. To all of you that are having to deal with pain or loss or illness. Illness itself can be a very bleak place to be sometimes, and those hours in a hospital can seem endless, but gradually you will get through, and gradually there will be light at the end of the tunnel, and it's all there for you to learn something from, I suppose, at the end of the day. Yeah.
Now, Gillian, I just have to say, as ever, you've been fantastic. Thank you for giving up your time. Of course, people need to keep watching EastEnders because it's just going to get better.
It is. Some of the scripts we're doing now, my jaw is on the floor.
It's a shame we can't talk about them,
I
but
know it is.
but no, as ever, thank you. Of course, keep safe, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. Lots of love, everybody.